Two guys of Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
You know, our approach to building this roster will be intentional, thoughtful, thorough, and detailed, well-planned. We know the destination. It's sustained success and championships for these great fans. We just know how to, and we know how to get there. It's just having the willingness, the wherewithal, and the confidence to make those decisions to stay on the right path.
I just want you guys to know that our approach to Reckless Speculation Thursday
Reckless Speculation
is always intentional, thoughtful, thorough, and well-planned. Every single
What about
week.
inclusive?
It's all
What about
inclusive.
collaboration?
It is collaborative. I want to thank Jim Suhan for teeing up the word collaborative for a Write That Down point for me. And I believe it was Lindsey Young from Vikings.com for teeing up the word culture for a Write That Down point for me.
There were multiple culture references. I can't remember the last introductory news conference, regardless of sport, where the word culture wasn't uttered. Seriously, can you remember?
Probably
Paul Fenton,
Zimmer's.
probably Gerson Rosas. Yeah, maybe
Jerry-
going back
Jerry
to
Kill.
2014 Mike Zimmer.
Jerry Kill, I think. Is
Maybe
the last
Kill.
one.
Tracy
But like in the
Place.
last 5 years, like that is the word in sports, not just professional sports, collegiate sports as well.
Yeah.
Culture.
Yeah. Well, the culture on Thursdays is we recklessly speculate here. We bring our friend Darren Doogie Wolfson, fresh from the 5 Eyewitness News TV and makeup station down there. He's got the tie on, and you can find him on the Scoop podcast as well, SKORNorth.com. So, you know, let's start wherever you want here, Dukes. The Vikings make the hire official. I think everyone was pretty blown away by just how great Kwesi Adofo-Mensah came off at his press conference. I think you see instantly the qualities that the Wilfs have seen and that John Lynch and Andrew Berry and Kyle Shanahan have seen. So what do you know about the way the search played out, and what do you know about the next steps moving forward here?
Well, certainly some got their guy, Phil. Andrew Miller, Vikings CEO. Certainly Kwesi made a great impression on some others. Do I feel like of the 7 people involved in this, latest round of interviews, plus, the Zoom interviews, the Ann Depners, the Rob Brzezinskis, the Ryan Munnins, the Jamal Stevensons, do I think it was a universal opinion that he is the guy? Not necessarily, but that doesn't mean that, they think this hire was wrong. There's a lot to like about this hire. The more you hear about Kwesi, talking to people that he worked with in San Francisco, in Cleveland, there's a genuineness there. He came across as very, very genuine, I thought, this morning. But ultimately, Judd tweeted this, but ultimately, what he said today, big picture, really doesn't matter. I can also tell you, Phil, no way, no how was the plan to only have one finalist in town. They always had planned for Ryan Poles to be here. So there's still something there. There's more to that story. Unfortunately, his people have been so busy. The Bears, finalizing a deal or about to finalize a deal with Colts, defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus to be their next head coach. So Ryan Poles, to use the cliche, hit the ground running right away. I don't even know if the Bears have held an introductory news conference to introduce Poles, but the Bears now have their head coach. But I'm just telling you, Phil, the plan all along was to have Ryan Poles here in town. I don't think you want to use the word intentional. Maybe there was some intentionalness to, some people leaking over the weekend. I had heard that steam. I used it on Channel 5. Our former colleague, Matt Collar of Purple Insider, tweeted it out. Jason Lockenfor of CBS Sports tweeted it out. There was legit Ryan Poles steam. So I'm just telling you, I need to find out what exactly transpired where the disconnect occurred, where, he chose not to leave Chicago to come here for an interview yesterday. But Miller got his guy. I think the Wilfs love him, and I think he's got a chance. I think he's ready, even though, he wasn't a finalist in Chicago. The Giants didn't even interview him, and I don't think the Raiders were interested in Kwesi, but, the Vikings fell in love with him in so many ways, so let's give him a chance.
Doogie, on Poles, do we think that if he hadn't gone to Chicago on Tuesday and taken that job immediately and come here, do we think that he was the favorite do we think that the room was as split as it could possibly be with 7 people? How do we think Poles was seen? Because, by today, clearly Mark Wilf is going to say things like, this was our top choice. I don't blame
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, that was
exactly
incredibly
right.
predictable, just like
But what do we
culture
know-
and collaboration was predictable.
But what do we know about the behind the scenes workings of really how that room felt about not just Kwesi, but also about Poles?
I feel confident saying this, Jed. I can tell you there was some support for Ryan Poles in that room. I can't tell you from all 7. I certainly haven't taken the temperature of all 7, but I can tell you, definitively, there was support for Ryan Poles in that room. So I want to find out, like I had mentioned, Phil, with Judd on Tuesday, that if, no pun intended, you took a poll of those close to Ryan Poles on Tuesday morning, January 11th, the day after Black Monday, okay, there are 3 open GM jobs: Vikings, Bears, Giants. Which one does he favor? I feel pretty good saying the Vikings were atop that list. Now, I'll also add, he went out east to interview for the Giants job. So he was a finalist for the Giants job. So they brought him into town for an interview that he was so impressed with that interview that if the Giants had offered him the job, he would have taken the Giants job. So it's entirely possible that he went to Chicago, was blown away. They made him a very good offer. They gave him the power that he desires, because we wonder about Kwesi's 53-man authority, type power here, but that Ryan Poles has what he needs in Chicago, and it all worked out. But I'm just telling you, I think I don't say this lightly. I'm positive there's more to that story. I need to unearth it, and maybe I never will, but I'll be digging. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So Dan Quinn's off the list, and Nathaniel Hackett's off the list because he's going to the Broncos to be their head coach. Kevin O'Connell, offensive coordinator for the Rams, who has a connection to Adofo-Mensah in San Francisco. They work together. DeMeco Ryans, San Francisco connection. Those are 2 names on the list. Raheem Morris, who I love. I mean, for me personally, I think he'd be the guy if I were hiring. Todd Bowles, Jonathan Gannon, and Kellen Moore all remain from that initial Vikings list. I'm going to throw Jim Harbaugh in there too, because someone close to him who wrote a book about him floated his name on Twitter 2 days ago. And he hasn't signed an extension yet or a revamped contract with Michigan. So, any thoughts, Doogie, on the list, if you will?
Sure. So Tom Pelissero, our good buddy, broke the news this morning that Dan Quinn is staying with the Cowboys. There is no sense that Quinn was going to be heavily in the mix here in Minnesota. Maybe elsewhere, like a lot of people thought he was going to get the Broncos job. So that had to be a kick in the gut that they decide on Nathaniel Hackett, not him. But I'm just telling you, there wasn't a sense that Quinn was going to be the guy here. There was a sense that Hackett was trending toward a second interview with the Vikings. So that would be the name of the news so far this morning. That would be the one that okay, I'm not necessarily saying like he would be the betting favorite, but there were people close to him pretty convinced he was going to get a second interview here. Okay, so that would be the one where you say, well, maybe the Vikings lost out to some extent on him. I would keep an eye for sure on the 3 names you laid out. Harbaugh, I suppose, is the wild card. Kwesi and Jim were in San Francisco, 2013, 2014. Jim Harbaugh is 58 years old. If he's ever going to come back to the NFL, seemingly that time is now. Remember, he had to take a pay cut in Ann Arbor last year. Then he leads Michigan to the playoffs. So he did a lot of good. He could leave Michigan, his alma mater, and say, you know what? I'm leaving the program in better shape than when I took it over. And at 58, my time is now. I want to win a Super Bowl. I want to get back to the NFL, and, this opportunity is there. But I would key more in on the 3 guys in that Rams-49ers NFC Championship game on Sunday. You laid out the names, O'Connell, Ryans, and Morris. I would keep an eye on those 3 names very, very closely.
It also sounds like Kellen Moore will be sticking around too in Dallas. Kelvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News saying both him and Dan Quinn, who was obviously reported earlier this morning, but Kellen Moore will also be sticking around in Dallas. So it looks like the Cowboys will probably run it back with all 3 of those guys in place.
Yeah, and if it doesn't go well, then Sean Payton can be the Cowboys head coach a year from now.
Yes,
I feel bad for Zim though. Like, I think if Quinn ends up with that Broncos job, I would have looked at Zim as being in the mix to be the Cowboys defensive coordinator. Now, Mike is being paid handsomely, if he wants to, just to do nothing for the next couple years, specifically the next year, if he just wants to hit the reset button, recharge physically and mentally. But I think Mike would have been in the mix there in Dallas. But yeah, I don't sense, thanks for that news, Declan, and I just don't sense Kellen Moore was squarely in the mix here. I like him. I think there's a lot to like about Kellen Moore, but I'm just telling you, I don't get the sense that he was strongly in the mix here. I will say on Kevin O'Connell, I heard the interview went well. However you want to quantify that, because I still wonder, Zoom, really, how much can you really gather via Zoom when it's 7 people slinging questions your way? But I think Kevin O'Connell made a pretty good impression last Friday. He doesn't call plays in L.A., but hey, Frank Reich didn't call plays before getting the Colts job. Andy Reid didn't call plays before getting the Eagles job. There are instances of guys having not called plays elevating to head coach. So certainly if they want to go with the offensive-minded head coach compared to, Ryans, Morris, maybe more so defensive, although we've talked about the offensive side of the ball experience Raheem Morris has. But if they want a very offensive-minded head coach, Kevin O'Connell would be the guy I would square in on.
And I think the direct parallel to O'Connell, if he gets the job here, would be Zach Taylor with the Bengals, who also was an associate of McVay's. I don't think he called plays, and it took him a while to get things right. But once he got Joe Burrow, he's great. So here's my question from a football standpoint, Dukes. And I saw that you actually tweeted Adofo-Mensah's response to this. But what can we recklessly speculate, and what do we think about final control of the 53-man roster? Because Ben Gessling of Star Tribune asked that question, and I think it was the only question where Kwesi sort of just shut things down and said, I asked Rick Spielman the exact same question in 2006, and he gave the exact same response, and he didn't have it. Brad, years after, confirmed that he did. So I'm going to assume that there's a fighting chance that they are either going to split the 53-man responsibility between coach and GM, which can be a little bit dangerous, or the coach is going to get it. To me, that's an incredibly important question, an important part, though, of how this thing is just going to run flat out from a football standpoint, because clearly a GM and coach are serving in their minds different masters of remaining employed.
Yes, I think that is some safe speculation, Judd. Let's fast forward to, say, August 31st. I believe that's a Tuesday, right? Because the Gopher football team opens up against Jerry Kill on a Thursday, and that's September 2nd, all right? So 53-man roster decisions are coming down to the wire, right? I suppose maybe that last preseason game would be September 2nd. So maybe September 3rd. Somewhere in that ballpark, right? Before week 1. The Vikings are trying to make those tough decisions. Who makes the 53? Who do we let go? Judd, I'm with you. It certainly is trending toward the coach having final say in that regard. Yeah, so I don't think he's going to have. I think he would have said. I really do. And so I'm glad Ben asked the question. I don't get the sense from, reading between the lines there that he is going to have final say. I really don't.
You guys might be right, but I will present a different viewpoint on this, and I've never met him in person. I'm just going off of everything I've learned about him in the last week or so, and probably taking in like an hour and a half's worth of press conferences now from him. He seems like the type of guy that even if he did have full control in his contract, that he would have given the same answer, and he wouldn't hang it over the head of the head coach in any way. That, again, maybe contractually he doesn't have it in the way that, Spielman had the same answer for Judd. I just don't think he would have said it in that forum either way. So maybe somebody will sniff it out once the head coach is hired. Maybe it's dependent on who the head coach is. I don't know. I mean, his contract's done because he signed it, but maybe there's some. Like if Doug Peterson comes in or Jim Harbaugh comes in, they're probably going to want some control over the 53-man roster, right? If Kevin O'Connell in his 30s comes in, there's probably not as much leverage for him to say, oh, by the way, and I demand control over this roster. So I do wonder how that's going to play out. I am interested. these three candidates, let's say just from this 49ers-Rams game, O'Connell, Ryans, and Morris, in terms of their backgrounds, one's an offensive guy, one's a defensive guy, one leans defense, but spent 4 years as the pass game coordinator for one of the best passing attacks in the NFL, the Atlanta Falcons. And so just three very – and by the way, Raheem Morris also has been a head coach in the past 12 years ago. And so if those wind up being the three finalists, you really are tapping into three wildly different backgrounds and bins of expertise, Dukes.
Big time. Now, Morris was also the interim head coach in Atlanta. So, I mean, he's got all that head coaching experience. The more I think about Harbaugh, Judd brought this up via text message with me earlier this week, that the Wilfs enjoy making a splash. Can we read between the lines that, okay, Kwesi isn't, in charge of the final decisions, that maybe it's pointing toward, an authority like Harbaugh, maybe Peterson. I certainly don't think Brian Flores, but yeah, I would, if we want to recklessly speculate. I mean, Phil, I can't dismiss that John Bacon tweet. You're right. That's his name. He's based in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Like, he's the guy. I believe this is correct, unless it changed in the last 6 to 9 months, that Jim Harbaugh actually doesn't have an agent, that he represents himself. So, that circle of his is pretty darn small. But there's been enough. Bruce Feldman of The Athletic floated it out a couple weeks ago that Jim's got a desire to return to the NFL.
And
that would satisfy that splashness that the Wilfs have seeked in the past.
And I think the report surfaced on Wednesday. Jim's brother in Baltimore, who just signed a contract extension, is now going to take the defensive coordinator from Michigan, who was on his staff previously, back as his DC. So, and I mean that's Harbaugh on Harbaugh crime, which seems odd, unless Jim's like, you do what you got to do, man, because I'm doing what I got to do.
Mm-hmm. Now, on the flip side, there was some Michigan assistant coach. Now, maybe it was from elsewhere. I wish I had the intimate knowledge, but maybe came from somewhere else. Maybe it wasn't internal. Came from somewhere else, and he has now joined the Wolverines coaching staff. And so some people were saying, why would Jim Harbaugh make that hire if he was going to leave? But that Bacon tweet, and actually Bacon followed up the next day, so I think that tweet was sent Tuesday. He followed up on Wednesday saying 75-25 that Jim stays in Ann Arbor. So we should add that for context. But I can't escape just wondering about that. That being said, I still would key in on those three guys in that Rams-Niners game this weekend. But I'm saying the Wilfs want to make another splash. They've made enough splashes going back 17 years. If they want to make another splash, Jim Harbaugh would be that splash.
This is so good. And what if Phil's right? What if his contract specifically reads, or that there's an addendum, if it's Harbaugh, he would want control. Like, there's no question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he would demand that as part of the move if he came to the Vikings. But Phil's right. If it's O'Connell, you're probably not going to say, okay, dude, you're a new coach and you get complete control. So Phil could be exactly right. It could be, if it's Harbaugh, we go this direction with control of the 53. If it's not, that direction. Mm-hmm. That's a good thought.
Hey, let me throw this out too, because we've touched on this a couple times. I want Doogie's thoughts on this. Like, on one hand, I want the best leader, and I think I mean Raheem Morris checks that box. Haven't really seen enough of Kevin O'Connell. DeMeco Ryans seems like he's got some leadership qualities. Again, it's hard to tell.
I think he does. Yeah, I think I can tell it more with him than O'Connell.
Okay. My thought though is, I want a leader. I want a CEO of a 53-man roster. I want someone that can look at things from 30,000 feet, bring everyone together, etc. A relationship builder. I want those things. But then I look at the four coaches that are coaching this weekend in the title games, and they're all offensive guys. Zach Taylor, Andy Reid. I mean, it's Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan. You could say it's like for sure 3 of the 5 brightest offensive minds in the league, and then wherever you would put Zach Taylor in that mix. So, how important do you think it is, leadership versus offensive background in today's NFL? I mean, how are you weighing those two different factors, Dukes?
Well, I mean, leadership trumps all. But if you're hiring Ryans or Morris, who is the offensive coordinator? I mean, these are questions that they're asking in Chicago right now. When you decide to go with a defensive guy in Eberflus,
Yeah.
who is he bringing in to baby Justin Fields? That Bears offense needs so much work. Like, who is going to be in charge of the offense? So, I mean, that would be a huge question. But, yeah, I'm with you, Phil. I look at those 4 coaches still alive. You know, I look at a young quarterback here that who knows what they think long term, but you did use the 66th pick on Kellen Mond. You still have the decision hovering with Kirk Cousins. If you trade him, who's the new quarterback you're bringing in? But you still have Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson. You know, like, it's hard not to look at that offense and say, there's enough pieces there. Let's bring somebody in to get back to that offense we were a couple years ago, that this is a top 5 type offense, that there's enough pieces. You got your tackles figured out. There's enough pieces there. Let's not be number 11, number 12, number 13 in offense. Let's ascend back up to number 5. Heck, keep Andre Patterson to coordinate the defense. I mean, he's beloved. Now, I need to check on this, Judd. Do you know what Andre's contractual situation is? Does his contract expire in the coming weeks, or is he signed through 2022?
I do not know that one.
I need to check on that. I'm tempted to say, because of assistant head coach duties, that he is signed beyond, but I need to look into that. I thought he actually might get an interview for the head coaching job, even though I didn't think he'd get the job. But no, that didn't happen. But, like, I can make a case. You bring in the offensive-minded coach. Andre Patterson is the defensive coach, and you roll from there.
That's really intriguing.
Well, I mean, it is reckless speculation Thursday.
Yeah, no,
I'm just telling you.
I know. Oh, yeah.
Phil is right.
Dude,
like, this guy, John Bacon.
Yeah.
This guy, John Bacon.
Yeah.
He knows more about Jim Harbaugh than anybody else, reporter-wise.
I know.
So why the heck earlier this week did he tweet, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but essentially what? Don't sleep on the Vikings when it comes to Jim Harbaugh?
That's not random.
That wasn't random.
Yeah.
Like, that's the guy on Jim Harbaugh. I just,
It's not random.
Well, yes, there's
not
smoke.
random.
Now, what's
there's
his buyout? I'm curious on his buyout. If you're bringing him in, heck, you need to go north of what you were paying Zim, right? So you're going to $8.5, $9, $10 million a year. So it's a lot of money. And if there is a buyout, you have to pay Michigan a good amount of money. But I don't think the Wilfs are, necessarily anti paying a lot of money. They are paying Zim and Spielman a lot of money for the next couple of years. But
That's true.
If you're looking for the splash, that's the guy.
I just think that Harbaugh would the Wilfs like to make splashes, and I think they especially like to create excitement when the excitement has waned. And like right now, I think we're all like, okay, this O'Connell might be good and blah, blah, blah. And the Wilfs are like, oh, no, hold on a second here. So that's why I do think that these two would actually make a move like this. I don't think it's crazy. And you're right. When Harbaugh's good friend comes out and tweets that, with a purpose too. Like he didn't, he knows Jim. So like he didn't betray a confidence there. That's
a good way of putting it, by the way, Judd. Friend. So I'm saying reporter. That is a Jim Harbaugh confidant. That is a friend.
Right. But clearly Jim gave him the go-ahead to tweet that. So the point is, if you're trying to put this puzzle together, there are definitely several important pieces connected. That's all I'm saying.
But where you'll hear specifically Ryans and Morris is satisfying the Rooney Rule. You have to do some in-person interviews with minority candidates. So you can grant Ryans, Morris second interviews. I mean, that's my expectation that both will get second interviews, at least one, but I think both. Mm-hmm. I could see a second interview with O'Connell as well, but that in the end, you make the splash higher. And if those negotiations fall apart, then you end up with one of the other three.
The buyouts, too, for Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, it's $4 million for each of the next 4 seasons. So you're basically looking at a $16 million buyout, right?
All right, so, I mean, that has to be factored in.
Yeah.
So
I didn't realize it was quite that much.
And probably like $8 to $9 million a year on
because
top
he took
of
a
that
pay
in
cut.
salary, right?
He took a pay cut last year. But I guess the buyout must have still been that the buyout didn't change.
Also, don't you think?
I mean, that's a pretty amount of coin, right? I mean, like,
Jim doesn't strike me as the type of guy to just sort of let things roll off his back, too. I think he can be a grudge holder. He can be a bleep you front office guy, right? Don't you think it's stuck in his craw a little bit that they made him take a pay cut? And then he came back, won the Big Ten, beat Ohio State, and now he's probably thinking, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, he can give the administration the figurative middle finger, right? Yeah. Like, screw you guys.
Okay, gun to the head here. I'll start with Declan and just rapid fire here. Who's the next Vikings head coach?
Raheem Morris. Mine's Raheem Morris.
Dukes.
You want me to go?
Mm-hmm.
I'm waffling between O'Connell and Ryans. Kevin O'Connell.
O'Connell. I agree with Dukes.
I think I was going to say, I'm not going to move off my answer. I was going to say O'Connell as well.
Okay.
The reason I say O'Connell is
they're going to lean offense.
Going back to December, heck, before Black Monday, I thought you'd go from the defensive-minded Zim to an offensive-minded coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And they've gone through this process.
There's a lot of variables there with Harbaugh that leaves O'Connell as that offensive-minded coach with Hackett off the board.
Yeah. In order, I think O'Connell, I would put Raheem Morris number one, but I think they're going to strongly consider Raheem Morris. And I think DeMeco Ryans is a strong candidate too, but I just don't know how you can go exclusive defensive background again for the third straight head coach, especially when you're watching this offense and these weapons and Justin Jefferson underachieve, right? Like you might have a new quarterback that you draft at some point. What if you draft Malik Willis or somebody who needs some development? Who's that guy? That's where I'm at.
And if you go O'Connell too, you're almost certainly going to lean on him to not only coach up the new quarterback, but help find him. So the whole thing behind the scenes, as far as who should we draft when, is going to be probably, if it's O'Connell, largely driven by him as well. And Rick couldn't find one, and Mike couldn't stand him. So like the polar opposite is offensive coach who helps you identify that guy, and now you develop him, and incredibly important, if you draft him, get 5 years of relatively cheap control. So it makes sense that a guy like O'Connell wouldn't just be picked for his in-game abilities as a coach, but also for his ability to flat out identify a quarterback who he then would be largely in charge of probably developing.
Yeah. Former quarterback himself.
Yeah.
To add intrigue, he was the quarterbacks coach for Kirk Cousins in Washington for 1 year.
Yes, they do have a connection. They do have a connection. That's really interesting. So, all right, Dukes, give us some rapid-fire scoops here. Vikings, anything else you got in your scoops bag?
Sure. There was some buzz. Heck, I opined about it. I did not report this in any form or fashion on Tuesday with Judd. I more opined, but I think others have run with it to some extent that there's some momentum on Catherine Richet of the Philadelphia Eagles coming here as the assistant general manager, that the Vikings don't have currently an assistant general manager, that would be a step up for her. She's, number 4 in the Eagles front office? Howie Roseman, there's another guy, then Brandon Brown, then Catherine. So she could go from number 4 in Philly to number 2 here. I was told by a Viking source this morning after checking that there's no real momentum on that front right now, but she did impress them last week in the Zoom interview. Maybe something to keep an eye on down the road. Kwesi, really tight with Andrew Berry, the Browns general manager. Andrew was in the Philadelphia front office. You connect some dots. So maybe we keep an eye on Catherine somewhere down the road. But, I don't sense there's, any, immediate momentum on bringing Catherine Richet from Philadelphia to Minnesota. I mean, I'm just telling you, somebody with the Vikings who I trust shot it down when I texted that possibility to him this morning. On the Wolves, let me read you a text from somebody heavily involved in the NBA.
Reckless speculation.
I've talked to a number of folks. Seem like the Wolves are looking to be super active at the deadline. The trade deadline, by the way, February 10th. Trying to trade Jake Layman for anything. People have been asking them about Naz Reid. You ready for this one? Because I don't think this is happening, but this is from the text message. They've actually shopped Pat Beverly.
What? I don't like that.
And he also says, hey, outside of Ann and Kat, all possibilities are on the table. Now, if I had to bet, I've told you guys, I think they come to an extension agreement, Maybe it's more so in the summer, not right now, even though they could do it right now, actually, with Pat Beverly. But I think Beverly is here. Minimum next year, but, under contract for the next couple years. I'm just, in the boat of with his injury history. He's injured right now, heck, although tiny chance he plays tonight. This is not a long-term issue with the ankle, but it's seemingly one thing after another with Pat Beverly injury-wise. But I think if you partially guarantee his contract for the 2023-2024 season, fully guarantee his contract for next year, there's some happy medium the sides can come to. So I think Beverly is here to stay. But it's just a reminder, Sachin Gupta is willing to do a ton to improve this roster. I would keep looking at finding a way, gentlemen, to get to the 6th seed. That 7 seed or 8 seed worries me from this standpoint. Right now, the play-in tournament would be the Wolves, Lakers, Clippers, Blazers. By the time the play-in tournament starts, decent chance Damian Lillard is back for the Blazers. Larry Nance Jr., certainly back for the Blazers. Now, the Blazers are above the luxury tax, so they're looking to do something on the edges before the deadline. They will do something, but their core will be in place. Paul George will be back by the play-in tournament for the Clippers. There's a chance Kawhi Leonard is back for the play-in tournament for the Clippers. Now Anthony Davis back with the Lakers. So if you're in a play-in tournament with the Lakers, Clippers, and Blazers, that would worry me. So that's where Sachin is looking at it, saying, okay, we need rebounding help, we need shooting help. I need to help this roster in case that scenario unfolds. But I'd love for them to find a way to climb as high as 6 or 5. Can you catch Denver? Can you catch Dallas? Denver got another win last night. I don't think so, but I'm not ruling it out. It's not like it's, impossible. What are they, within 2.5 games of the 6th seed? Mm-hmm. So just find a way maybe to get to the 6th seed, avoid the play-in tournament. But the play-in tournament, I think those 4 teams are just, I don't know if anybody's making a big jump up. I think there's a decent chance, even though there's another 35 games to go, that this very well could be the play-in tournament. The Wolves, Blazers, Lakers, and Clippers. There's no way the Kings are jumping up. The Spurs aren't jumping up. I don't think the Pelicans are jumping up. The Rockets or Thunder. So you're looking at that, unless the Mavs or Nuggets fall. But I can tell you, Sachin Gupta is working it pretty good.
Dude, yeah, I saw that Rocco was getting some trade rumor love the other day. But
we brought him up. I think Wendy maybe brought him up with me. I brought him up with one point with Judd. Yeah, Hoops Hype chimed in on Rocco. It's recency bias. Declan?
Yeah.
He looked miserable the other night against the Wolves. How does he help you?
Mm-hmm. Well, another name
I wouldn't put Jared Vanderbilt on the bench for Robert Covington right now.
I'll throw you a little scoop. I was told a name to watch on a possible move for Portland. Norman Powell.
Yes, that's a lot of money, though.
A 5-year contract just this last offseason, but he's got a reasonable deal, $16 million. Wouldn't be surprised if they also try to get out of him to push Portland out of the luxury tax.
And Chris Finch was in Toronto, right, when Norman Powell would have been there. So Chris Finch has intimate knowledge of Norman Powell. That contract worries me. I like him, Declan. I do. I don't know if I like that contract.
Mm-hmm. He is a sniper. If you could, goodbye Malik Beasley. Hello Norman Powell, and watch the Wolves.
They very much, with the way Jalen Noel is playing, Phil, they very much are willing to move Malik Beasley.
Yeah.
Make no mistake about that.
Great stuff. That's inside information about your favorite Minnesota sports teams. We'll see you, Doogie.
Oh, and the Wolves will have a scout tonight at Williams Arena. I'm taking the little man. I'll be at Williams Arena tonight. I got to remember my vaccination card.
Nice.
What's that?
Right.
Bye.
What'd you say? Okay. Well, the Wolves will be there scouting E.J. Liddell of the Buckeyes.
Wasn't worth it.
See ya. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye,
All right, see ya. Bye. What did you try to say?
What?
I said, you'll be scouting too. He said, I'm taking the little man. And I said, you'll be scouting too.
You know that every time you throw the ball anywhere toward Doogie, he's going to take it and run.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said bye. I'm sorry. No, my fault.
He goes ISO mode.
No, my bad. My bad. Not his bad. My bad.
Isolation. Clear out.
Yeah.
Nope. Clear out.
Nope. And that's why I blamed myself. I wasn't trying to be rude. I just shouldn't have said it. So I'm clearing out. Yes.
Yeah.
But my bad. So Kirk, sometimes just say my bad.
Look at it. Always got to bring Kirk into it. Reckless speculation Thursday here. Okay.